How many years after draft do you need to judge an NBA pick? 1, 2, maybe 3 years? Some guys, you can tell right away. Magic famously won a finals MVP ring as a rookie. Tim Duncan did the same thing in year 2. Kevin Durant led the league in scoring by his 3rd season. And Derrick Rose, my favorite player, was an MVP in his 3rd season. But those aren't normal players. They're the outliers. The majority of guys in the NBA need more time than that. But I think 4 years might be enough to get to know players. Not just who they are, but kind of predict what they're going to be. And this brings us to the 2021 draft. 4 seasons in, and I think this draft class is ready for some evaluating. And for this video, we're looking at the first 10 picks, their development, what's worked, what's stalled, and what their teams got right or wrong. For each player, I'm going to be dropping a verdict, performance, value, and whether the pick holds up 4 years later. So let's figure out just how good this top 10 was. While there would be some debate in the following years, in 2021, it was definitely obvious that Cade Cunningham was going number 1. And that's because Detroit needed a lot of help, like pronto. The Pistons had just come off one of the bleakest decades in the league. 2 playoff appearances, 0 playoff wins, and a revolving door of maybe he's the guy, names like Andre Drummond, Reggie Jackson, and Blake Griffin on one healthy knee. Yes, and that was during the good years. We're not even going to get into 2010 through 2015. Did they at least have luck in the draft? I mean, look at their record. And let's take a wild guess. Took Stanley Johnson over Devin Booker, and then following it up by drafting Henry Ellenson while passing on Karis LeVert, Pascal Siakam, and Malcolm Brogdon. Their rebuild core was either underhyped and underperformed, overhyped, or somewhere else by the time things got real. And by 2021, things were looking bad in Detroit. While the team managed to draft some decent role players like Luke Kennard and Bruce Brown, by this time they had already lost them. All they had left was past their prime superstars in Blake and D Rose, and they needed a new direction. And for that, they would need a new piece that they could build around. Someone who could steady the chaos and give the rebuild a focal point. And that plan was to find this player through the draft. And that's what Cade was supposed to do. Luckily for the Pistons, everywhere Cade went, greatness followed. Cade grew up in Arlington, Texas, a kind of overlooked basketball city if I'm being honest. They had some decent players that bounced around the league and played overseas. His cousin Ashton had him grinding early, and his older brother Cannon basically turned their driveway into a training camp. Cade started out as a forward, but he actually switched to point guard in AAU, which thankfully was the right decision, seeing nowadays guards are 6'5" and up. He transferred to Montverde, where he led a team that never lost in 2020 and had 5 future NBA players on the roster, a few of which we'll talk about later. This team achieved a perfect 25-0 record, outscoring opponents by an average of 39 points per game, which is why some refer to it as the best high school team of all time, even people on LinkedIn for some reason. But because I'm probably never going to make a video on this, I want to ask you guys right now, which team was better, the Montverde team or Lonzo Ball, LiAngelo Ball, and LaMelo Ball's team? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, Cade wasn't overly flashy. He wasn't chasing virality on Instagram and YouTube, he just ran the show, like your favorite vet, but 17 years old and still in high school. Now, as you might expect, being the best player on one of the best high school teams of all time comes with some benefits, like helping you establish a reputation with every major college in America sending you home a letter to be on their team. Cade could have gone anywhere. Kentucky, Duke, Kansas, take your pick. But he chose Oklahoma State. Why? Well, because that's where his brother Cannon was on staff. Loyalty over flair. A very Cade move, as you're gonna see throughout the rest of his career. The only thing was, that roster wasn't exactly stacked. Besides Cade, they only had 2 more top 100 recruits on the team, and Cade was the only one that made it to the league. He dragged them to a 21-9 record and a trip to March Madness. Cade was the offense, he was the closer, he was the leader, and the best defender half the time. He averaged 20.1 points, 6.2 rebounds, and 3.5 assists, all while getting double teamed every night and still looking like he was playing 2 steps ahead of everyone else. He won Big 12 Player of the Year and Freshman of the Year. He made tough shots, controlled tempo, and didn't flinch in close games. By the end of that year, the number 1 pick was basically locked in. So the Pistons are sitting there with the number 1 pick, and like I said, they weren't overthinking it. At that time, when you were taking a look at any magazine, Instagram account, major publication, you would see Cade at the number 1 spot. So you can call it a consensus number 1 pick, and for good reason. He was somewhere between 6'6" and 6'8" with a 7-foot wingspan. He handled the ball great, he shot from deep, and played cool in any quarter or situation. The scouts were comparing him to Luka and Ben Simmons, back when being compared to Ben Simmons was a good thing. There were some wild times, 4 years ago, huh? And some scouts nitpicked his athleticism. He wasn't explosive enough. Meanwhile, Keon Johnson was out there breaking the vertical leap record and hasn't been heard from since. Cade didn't end up going to the combine, and considering where he ended up getting picked, he didn't really need to. He knew where he was going. The Pistons knew what they needed. No mystery, no curveball, no politics. Just a team finally making the obvious choice.
The Detroit Pistons select Cade Cunningham from Oklahoma State University.
So, how did year 1 go? Well, not perfect at first. Cade rolled his ankle in training camp and missed the start of the season. When he finally did play, he opened up by missing his first 14 three-point attempts, while going 1 from 21 in his first 3 games. He also averaged less than 9 points on 19% shooting. It was like watching a controller disconnect in real time. But once he settled in, things started to click. By mid-season, he looked like a pro, averaging 17.4 points, 5.6 assists, and 5.5 rebounds, and doing it with basically no spacing, no shooting, and lessened expectations. He didn't win Rookie of the Year, that went to Scottie Barnes. But Cade was right there. His year was solid. His team record, though, pretty brutal. But he was showing signs that there was a reason why he went number 1, and all of that was enough to keep hope alive in Detroit. Well, more than enough signs. Averaging 17, 5, and 5 at 20? Come on, guys. But by the time we got to the next season, things somehow looked worse than ever in Detroit. Cade made it through 12 games before the pain in his left shin got too bad to play through. He was averaging just under 20 a game with 6 boards and 6 assists. Very solid numbers. But something was clearly off. He looked slower, less explosive, and the jump shot wasn't falling. In December, he opted for season-ending surgery. There was no big injury moment, just lingering soreness that never improved. And with Cade out, Detroit went into full tank mode. Again. Meanwhile, guys from his draft class and younger started blowing up. Edwards made the All-Star team. Halliburton was getting real buzz. In Detroit, they were back in the lottery, barely mentioned on League Pass, and nobody was talking about Cade anymore. Alright, year 3. This was supposed to be a comeback for the franchise. Instead, it turned into a full-blown disaster. Cade returned healthy to start the 2024 season, but nothing else looked right. The roster was full of young guys still figuring things out. The vets didn't really fit the vibes, and Monty Williams was constantly tweaking lineups like it was preseason in March. Cade was putting up career highs, but it didn't matter. The Pistons lost 28 straight games, the longest losing streak in NBA history. No cap, even the broadcast team sounded like they'd given up by December.
The team, they're saying the unknown comic.
Pistons losing streak has reached 25.
Cade missed the final stretch with another injury. And even when he did play, national media barely mentioned him. Other players were fighting for playoff seats. Cade was fighting to not be forgotten. Detroit was unwatchable, and Cade's 3rd year felt like a wasted one. Well, that's what most fans thought. If you actually tuned into any of the Pistons games during the 2024 season, you'd actually see that they weren't getting blown out every game. They just couldn't close games to save their life. And the ownership noticed that. So going into the offseason, they'd work on that as a team, as well as add new players that could, well, help with that. So, by year 4, Cade finally had a healthy leg and a real NBA team around him, with better spacing, actual shooters, and a few vets who could function in a half-court offense. Cade took off.
Really getting up shots out of halftime. There's Cade. Oh, Cade!
He averaged 26.1 points, 9.1 assists, and 6.1 rebounds, all career highs, and made his first All-Star appearance. He had a crazy game winner against Miami on national TV.
Of course, preparing for a switch. Bam fights through the screen. Cunningham gets the ball against Bam. Pulls up for the win. Got it! Detroit basketball!
He got most improved player buzz, and for the first time in over a decade, the Pistons actually looked like a good basketball team. The leap made sense. Cade was finally healthy. The roster made sense, and he had full control of the offense. He wasn't doing Anthony Edwards highlight dunks or doing viral crossovers. He just made the game easier for everyone around him. He became the guy Detroit thought they were drafting. And here's something weird if you watch him. He's not as dominant as Luka or as explosive as young LeBron or old LeBron at times, but he impacts the game in the same way as these two. And the numbers are there to back this up. Cade controls pace, breaks down defenses, and has turned one of the league's worst franchises into a legitimate playoff team. They even won their first playoff game in nearly 2 decades. So yeah, there's no real debate here. Detroit made the right call. Okay, so we can now understand why the Detroit Pistons took Cade at number 1. No ifs, ands, or buts. He's definitely a number 1 pick. But what about Houston? Were they on track with the number 2 pick? Well, let me show you where the Rockets were at the time.
The Houston Rockets select
And at this point, the Rockets were fresh out of the James Harden era, where they competed for a title for nearly a decade, always failing to reach even the finals. For various reasons. Well, it's actually a couple. Injuries, the Golden State Warriors, and a fat suit. But that's a story for another day. Yeah, very weird moment in NBA history. But in the season leading up to the draft, the Rockets bottomed out. They went from 44 wins to 17. Injured John Wall, Victor Oladipo, and what was thought to be Christian Wood were placeholders for real stars. The team lost 20 straight at one point and finished with the worst record in the league. So, with the number 2 pick in hand, Houston had one job. Get someone who could lead the next era. Someone with talent. Yes, but also someone fans would actually care about watching. And that's where this guy comes in.
With the second pick in the 2021 NBA Draft, the Houston Rockets select Jalen Green from Merced, California.
Jalen Green had one of the highest ceilings in the draft. But unlike Cade, he wasn't seen as a surefire franchise piece. He wasn't the plug-and-play future all-star. He was like the this could be special if it all comes together guy. And for Houston, this was perfectly fine. The team wasn't trying to win right away, and they weren't trying to play it safe. They were in a perfect spot to gamble on upside. And Jalen, he was all upside. He grew up in Merced and Fresno, California, where he built a name for himself pretty quick. Ever since a freshman in high school, Jalen played fast, jumped high, and scored a lot. A whole lot. By his senior year, he was averaging over 31 a game and showing off on multiple million-view mixtapes. At that point, he wasn't NBA ready, but he looked like, with a little bit of work, he could be a starting guard in the league. After finishing high school, Jalen took a route that most people didn't take. He skipped college and went straight into the G League. Okay, the G League Ignite program was a new experiment for the NBA, built to give elite high school talent an alternative path rather than going to the NCAA. Players would train with NBA-level coaches, play against grown pros, and get paid, all while skipping the whole pretend to be a student part. Now, if you were interested in player development, you should know that Ignite wasn't your average team. It was more like a prep academy. But the final exam was 30-year-olds with 10-day contracts trying to make rent. The program turned out a few lottery picks. Jalen Green, Jonathan Kuminga, Scoot Henderson, but the results were definitely mixed. Some guys thrived, others faded. And with college players now getting paid through NIL deals, the NBA shut the whole thing down in 2024. Still, for Jalen though, it worked. He got paid, he got reps, and he got real NBA eyes on his game. He was hitting off the dribble threes, getting downhill with that first step, and finishing like a guy who had been doing this for a while. His playmaking was solid, his shot selection was developing, and defensively, let's just say he wasn't terrible, which is basically a win for an 18-year-old in a grown man league. And most importantly, he didn't look out of place. The speed, the pacing, it all made sense for him. This was the first time fans saw Jalen in an actual NBA-style environment, and honestly, it looked pretty natural. The thing that left a lot to be desired was his shooting mechanics, which looked a little off to say the least, and prevented Jalen from being a consistent scorer. But at that point, this wasn't a major problem because the shooting form could always be tweaked. Case in point, Lonzo Ball. Still, being drafted by Houston, Jalen came into a perfect situation for a young player of his playing style. Since the team had no expectations, not to be punny, but Jalen had the greenest of green lights. So that's what he did. The results were shaky early on. He shot just 30% from deep through the first few months, and teams were daring him to pull. His mechanics were inconsistent, the footwork was off, and the release point varied from game to game. But Green kept working. He put in work with his shooting coach, and gradually, Jalen started shooting better and his numbers improved. By April, something finally clicked. Jalen closed out the season with 5 straight games of 30 or more points, joining Allen Iverson as the only rookie to ever pull that off, even dropping 41 in the finale. Looking like a guy who figured out how to weaponize all that athleticism. He made the all-first rookie team, and while Houston still finished at the bottom of the West, they had their guy, a high-volume scorer who was finally learning how to make shots that mattered. Jalen entered year 2 with more responsibility, more minutes, more touches, and more pressure to lead an offense that still had no identity. The scoring bump was real. He looked more confident attacking closeouts, more comfortable in pick and rolls, and had a few nights where he completely took over games. 3 40-point outings, including a 42-piece against Minnesota, showing what the ceiling looked like when everything clicked. But still, the issues didn't go away. The defense still lagged behind. The decision-making was a hit or miss, and when his jumper wasn't falling, he struggled to impact the game in other ways. Houston finished with 22 wins, a small step forward, but still near the bottom of the league. Yes, Jalen was putting up numbers, but the bigger question was whether the Rockets were actually getting better. Empty stats are a real thing, And NBA fans, including myself, are weirdly obsessed with sniffing them out. Some of them literally writing code to figure out who's scoring just for the box score. And in this league, if your team doesn't start winning, you can easily end up having a reputation like Rudy Gay or Jordan Poole. By the end of the year, Jalen had the points, but not much else to show for it. But next year, we had some good news for Jalen. He didn't disappear. Instead, he actually leveled up again. Starting in February 2023, Jalen Green didn't miss a single game. That's 186 straight and counting. In a league where everyone's load managing or nursing some injury, Jalen just kept showing up. And it wasn't just availability, he got better. Stronger frame, more control off the dribble, better balance on his jumper, and he started picking his spots instead of trying to force everything. By early 2024, he was putting up 20 plus a night without hijacking the offense, leading to a 3-year, $106 million extension with a player option in the summer of 24. A message that can be taken a couple different ways. Let's check them out. 1. The Rockets see value, but don't see long-term value in him yet, seeing his teammate Şengün got a 5-year extension and Jalen only got 3. 2. Jalen is betting on his upside. With a 2+1 player option, it can be read as Jalen thinks he'll be worth a lot more by the time the 2 or 3 years is up for him to re-sign for a much larger contract. Or 3. The Rockets want to keep his contract semi-reasonable/short so they can use him as a trade asset in any future negotiations. The team played great, winning more than 50 games for the first time since the James Harden era. And Jalen started playing a bit more consistently, accents on a bit. Since January of 2024, Jalen averaged 22.1 points a game. His shot selection was better, playmaking too, and he had a lot fewer tunnel vision moments. The Rockets even finished second in the West. And while Jalen didn't become an all-star, his teammate did. Jalen and Şengün were looking like they could have a Murray-Jokic type of thing going on. But then came the playoffs. Where the Rockets would face the Golden State dynasty on its last legs. The Warriors were low in the standings, but late in the season, they traded for Jimmy Butler, so they kind of got some new energy to them. His first playoff game, he only scored 7 points, shooting 3 from 15 from the field, which was obviously terrible. However, in Game 2, he redeemed himself by dropping 38 on 86% true shooting. Jalen finally looked like the finisher the Rockets needed him to be. But then for the rest of the series, he just couldn't put it together. The Warriors made it difficult for him, neutralized him on drives to the rim, and made him take tough shots. As a result, Jalen didn't put up more than 12 points or shoot better than 38% in the series. Yeah, the media and the internet were not happy. While Jalen didn't turn into a star in 2025, besides the playoffs, the team wasn't a disaster. He performed well and seems to have a good chemistry with the rest of the team. Adding the business side, solid jersey sales, social media engagement, commercials. But during the summer of 2025, the Rockets decided it was enough and made a huge trade, sending Jalen Green and some other picks to Phoenix for Kevin Durant. We'll see if this change of scenery will do him any good to push him to the next level. I will say, having Devin Booker, Jalen Green, Grayson Allen all on the same team, it doesn't look like a recipe for success. And for all I know, this trade may not be over. Jalen Green may get rerouted somewhere else. I think there will be a lot more trades, maybe a buyout, or other trade rumor conversations coming out of Phoenix this summer. So, was it the right pick? In a way, yeah. They were able to take a high pick, put him into a winning system, and then trade him for one of the most consistent scorers in the entire NBA to hopefully take their team out of the first round of the playoffs. Wherever Jalen Green ends up, I hope he actually gets playing time and treats next season like a revenge tour to prove this playoff run wasn't just a fluke.
9.
Besides that one game, shit, straight shit. I gotta be better. First playoffs isn't an excuse.
Oh, and he's only 23, so we'll see how it goes. Oh, you thought I forgot about the Cade vs. Jalen beef? I mean, I did mention storylines earlier, didn't I? This so-called beef goes back a few years, before the draft, before the league. Even in high school and AAU circuits, Cade and Jalen were already being compared. They had different styles of play and different vibes on the court, but they were in the same conversation all the time. They even went first and second. Of course, when they came to the league, things heated up real quick. In the first matchup, the guys dropped 43 combined points. Highlight of the matchup was Jalen got the ball near the three-point line, ran past over Cade, and dunked strong. And got a tech for yelling in his direction, which probably won't be the last time these things happen with them. The next summer, Cade got his get back. During a Team USA select scrimmage, Cade threw down, then tapped Jalen on the chin as he jogged back to get on defense. And the internet had a field day. And since then, it's been back and forth. And on the same day, 3 years later, Jalen dunked on Cade again.
Defensive play. Now finds Jalen Green.
Oh, my goodness!
He did it!
Oh,
he did it!
Oh!
No, he did not!
Flexed, taunted, and yep, got hit with another tech. But let's keep it real. When it comes to actual basketball, Cade is 100% winning that war. In their most recent matchup, January 2025, Cade dropped 32, 9, and 7 in a Pistons win. Jalen had 19. Not bad, but just not close. Jalen on one hand has more highlights, but on the other hand, Cade's got way more success and the edge in the rivalry. And I don't think anyone would argue that at this point. Cade's never talked much about the rivalry, but based on how he plays every time they face off, yeah, he remembers.
What is it about you guys going 1-2 that has made this so much? Like, I feel like you even play at a higher level. What do you guys have right now, just from a competition state?
I think it's exactly that. We want to compete against each other. They've always put us up against each other since high school as far as who was better. And I think we both kind of enjoy to be able to head up against each other and see who's the best. And there's nothing.
No handshakes before the game, nothing like that.
I don't think we need any of that.
To be honest, I don't remember many players having a big defensive impact right out the gate. Maybe the NBA's favorite punching bag, Rudy Gobert, who started getting Defensive Player of the Year votes the moment he became a starter. And I definitely don't remember anyone, outside of maybe early Dwight Howard, having a huge defensive impact right away. Well, anyone except Evan Mobley, that is. He didn't dominate with flash, he did it with control. He was quiet, poised, and ridiculously efficient, and he swept the Pac-12 like it owed him money. The Cavs saw a 7-footer who moved like a wing and defended like a vet, and they were still rebuilding post-LeBron, trying to figure out who exactly they were. I mean, they already had Garland, and they had just locked up Jarrett Allen. But what they didn't have was an identity, and Mobley changed that almost immediately.
The Cleveland Cavaliers select Evan Mobley from the University of Southern California.
He didn't need time to figure out the NBA. He just kind of showed up and started doing stuff that most guys don't try until year 5. He was switching on to guards, playing cat and mouse in the lane, sliding his feet like a wing, while still being able to protect the rim like a true 5. The Cavs had one of the worst defenses in the league before he arrived. Then Mobley showed up, and they looked like a different team overnight. By year 2, he was already on the all-defensive first team. And guys, that doesn't happen unless you're doing something special. He also developed instant chemistry with Jarrett Allen. 2 very mobile bigs, both protecting the basket, and both cleaning up everyone else's mistakes. It was one of the nastiest front courts in the league, and a huge reason why Cleveland turned into a top 5 defense, well, almost overnight.
Some questions maybe about whether 2 7-footers could coexist on this Cavaliers team. How do you think this partnership has developed between you and Evan in year 3?
I feel like every single year gets better. I feel like when he was first drafted, there's a lot of questions on whether 2 big men can work in the modern NBA. But at this point, I think we proved everybody wrong. We're winning games. Evan's having a career year. You can see our win streak going. We're on a record streak right now. I think it's all working out.
And offensively, he kept it tight. Lobs, floaters, cuts, short hooks, putbacks, all that stuff that keeps the ball moving and the offense flowing. He wasn't forcing it, he was trying to prove he was a star. He just made smart plays, stayed efficient, and left the noise to other people. In year 3, Mobley's offense finally caught up with his defense. Okay, nearly caught up. But his defense is that good. Mobley started the year averaging around 16 and 10 over the first 21 games, until a knee injury had him out the next 22 games. However, by the time he got back on the court, he continued playing great.
Team finds Harris. Harris goes inside, blocked by Mobley. For Cleveland. Mitchell on the bench to begin the quarter. As Mobley at the rim. Mobley. Levert quick.
The team trusted him to initiate more. Off the short roll, on face-ups, even pushing in transition. He started making live dribble reads, hitting cutters, and creating offense without slowing the game down. He didn't turn into Kevin Garnett overnight, come on. But he was getting better. He added volume without sacrificing efficiency, and suddenly you had to worry about both ends. By this year, the 2025 season, the leap was official. He made his first All-Star team, and it wasn't one of those he got in as a replacement type of things. He actually earned it. Averaging 18.5 points a game, 9.3 rebounds, and 3.2 assists, taking over 3 threes per night, while hitting 37% of them. On defense, nothing's changed. Still one of the best rim protectors in basketball, tied at 5th in total blocks, top 5 in contested shots, and the Cavs' entire scheme is built around his presence. The Cavs continued winning, grabbing the top seed in the East early and held on to it by the end of the season. Their defense was elite, especially with Mobley on the floor. So, going from a rookie to a 4-year vet and making the All-Star team, how is this leap possible? Well, to be honest, coaching was a big part of it. Kenny Atkinson came in and told Mobley to stop waiting around and start acting like the guy. Not a guy, the guy. That meant taking more shots, making more decisions, and not drifting through possessions like it was still his rookie year. And the locker room bought in. Mitchell, Garland, and the rest of the Cavs wanted Mobley to take a bigger role, both as an offensive player and a leader. Cleveland's system is actually perfect for Mobley now. Some nights he's the 4, next night he's anchoring the 5. It really doesn't matter, they built it to be flexible around his skill set. Mobley switches, rotates, spaces, rolls, and the game bends around him. He's not hijacking 25 possessions a night or begging for ISOs. To put it simply, he just controls both ends on a contending team. And that's all they need. Alright guys, the big question, which I think you all know the answer to. So, was Mobley the right pick for Cleveland? Yeah, I can say that with no hesitation. From day one, he gave them what they didn't have, a defensive backbone. Now in year 4, he's doing that and giving them 18 a night with a real shooting touch. Best of all, Mobley doesn't need a system built for him, just the one that uses him right. And Cleveland's figured that out.
I think every Cavs fan should be really excited about what is to come for Evan Mobley, because I think he's going to have an awesome postseason.
In 2025, he won his first Defensive Player of the Year award. He's looking like a long-term All-Star. Although if Wemby stays healthy, that potential won't matter, because Wemby will get, well, all the Defensive Player of the Years. But that's besides the point, and a different video topic. The important thing here is Mobley fits the Cavs. Their roster, their identity, their timeline, it all fits like a glove. Wow, look at this. 3 picks and 3 home runs. How often does that happen? At the time of the draft, this was the first real curveball. Scottie was highly regarded, no question. But most mock drafts had him going in the back half of the lottery. A top 10 guy? Yeah, everyone knew he was a lottery pick, but a top 10 pick though? Almost every major outlet had Jalen Suggs as the pick at 4. It felt obvious. He was a college star, a March Madness hero, and a tough-nosed winner from Gonzaga. When the Raptors took Barnes, it kind of shocked the room. A 6'9" forward with point guard instincts and no real jumper. Most people, well, fans and media, were surprised and a bit confused. But in hindsight, it turns out Toronto knew exactly what they were doing. Scottie grew up in West Palm Beach. Not the easiest environment, but early on, it was clear that the kid was going to outwork people. By 3rd grade, he was already hooping with older players. By high school, he was playing alongside Vernon Carey Jr., running point in AAU and showing real guard instincts even at 6'9". Then came Montverde. That loaded squad with Cade, Moody, Sharp, and well, Barnes fit right in. He played defense, he passed, he brought energy. He didn't even need a lot of touches to make his presence felt. At Florida State, he came off the bench. But he still won both ACC Freshman of the Year and 6th Man. He did a little bit of everything. Defend, rebound, initiate offense. He didn't care about being the guy, he just cared about doing everything. And that's what caught the Raptors' eyes. Other GMs and coaches knew that he would become good, but I don't think they knew he would be this good this fast.
With the 4th pick in the 2021 NBA Draft, the Toronto Raptors select Scottie Barnes.
Let's keep it a buck though. Most teams viewed Barnes as a project. His jumper wasn't there, he didn't score a whole lot in college, plus he had a big frame but an unclear offensive role. Even Raptors fans weren't totally sold. Jalen Suggs, however, was the safe bet. A lead guard, clutch at Gonzaga, coming off a near title run. Barnes, on the other hand, felt like a gamble, but by the 2nd week of the season, he flipped the script. He was averaging 18 and 9, shooting over 50%, guarding 4s, 5s, grabbing boards, pushing in transition. He looked like a starter, not a work in progress. And with seeing that, Toronto gave him real responsibilities. The defense was as advertised. The man was long, switchable, and physical. But it was the poise and decision-making that shocked people. He was playing hard and playing smart. Rookie of the Year race came down to Barnes and Mobley. Mobley had more polish on his defense, but Scottie had the flash, the drives, the spin moves, the full court push, and the passing vision, and it was a really close race between them. However, Barnes ended up taking it by 15 points, one of the tightest races in years, and the Raptors, who took all the heat on draft night, suddenly looked like geniuses. Alright, let's go to his second year, where he kind of took a slight step back, at least statistically. His scoring remained nearly the same, the rebounds dropped, and the assists went up, but only slightly. Overall, Scottie's usage went up, but his efficiency didn't. Some of it was just the league adjusting to him, defenders sagged off more, the mid-range and three-point numbers weren't there, just 28% from deep. But the bigger concern was effort. There were games where he just looked not in it, kind of passive, and the body language became a talking point. Nothing fell apart, it just didn't build. And for a guy who looked like a franchise player as a rookie, year 2 left people wondering, was that leap real or was it too much too soon? Alright, so after a rocky sophomore season, Barnes came into year 3 with something to prove now. The Raptors had just traded Siakam and OG, and suddenly, Scottie wasn't just part of the core, he was the core. And as the core, he played his best season yet. He took a leap to become the de facto team leader and climbed up everyone's redraft list from the 2021 draft. In 2024, the Raptors started running their offense through him. High post touches, elbow actions, inverted pick and rolls, and his defense became more consistent than ever. In his first 2 years, he defended his matchups well, but this year, he took it to another level. Scottie became the backline disruptor, rotating, contesting, and cleaning up everything around the rim. In the 2024 season, he averaged 1.3 steals per game and 1.5 blocks per game, becoming one of only 52 players in NBA history that have ever done that in a season. That's not just solid, that's special. The numbers, the effort, the role, all of it kind of clicked, and he finally earned that all-star spot. The Raptors gave him a 5-year, $270 million extension. A clear message. This is your team now, Scottie. And for a stretch, it looked like he'd taken the leap from intriguing to undeniable. After the All-Star leap, most people expected another step forward, but instead, it kind of leveled out. His numbers slightly dipped across the board. Scoring, assists, rebounding, nothing dramatic, but enough to raise some eyebrows. But to be fair, the Raptors had a lot of injuries going on this year. From Emmanuel quickly being injured, to RJ Barrett, to Jakob Poeltl, the whole starting lineup was basically in and out the whole year, which would in turn put a lot more defensive focus on Scottie Barnes, seeing that, well, for some parts of the year, he was the main scorer. And what some people might point out is that his biggest problem was his three-point shot, which is surprising and unsurprising because of the inconsistency in the lineups throughout the year. But with all that being said, he still shot just 27% from 3, and that was on like 4 attempts per game. And with that, added another hand injury that was lingering throughout the year, and you get the perfect recipe for a rhythm never fully coming back. Some nights, he looked like the guy, and other nights, it looked like he wasn't sure when to attack. Defensively, he was still one of the best in the league, but on offense, things felt stuck. Not enough guard help, not a clean fit as a post scorer. Even though the Raptors gave him the keys, the cars still needed work. So, at this point, what's holding Scottie back? Which is a question that needs to be asked, but it still feels kind of weird seeing that I'm saying this about an all-star. Well, let's start with the obvious, the jumper. It's still unreliable. He's sub 27% from 3 this year, and defenders know it. They sag, they dare him to shoot. Even league average shooting would change everything. The spacing, the playmaking, and the rhythm. There's also the inconsistency. Again, some nights he looks like a future All-NBA forward. Other nights, kinda passive, and you may forget he's on the floor. The best players force the issue when they're on the court, and Scottie's still figuring that part out. He's also not wired to create offense the way elite scorers are. He still struggles to break guys down off the dribble, and the footwork isn't there in isolation. Toronto keeps toggling between post touches and pick and rolls, but he's not a clear fit for either. However, context matters. He's 24, he's still growing, and the roster around him hasn't really been made for him yet. Toronto cycled through like 7 backup point guards last year. However, even with all that being said, the good news is that his ceiling is still there. He's already an all-star, he's already one of the most versatile defenders in the league, and if the Raptors ever figure out the backcourt, space the floor, and give him structure, he's got real All-NBA upside. So, to put it frankly, yeah, he's the real deal. He just needs real support and maybe a jumper. Okay, definitely a jumper. And hey, if this basketball thing ever stops working out, you can always do comedy. Unintentional comedy, but still a little funny.
Watch what the man does here now. And they went crazy. No way he's dick eating with that.
The Orlando Magic select Jalen Suggs from Gonzaga University.
Okay, look, back in 2021, I knew Jalen Suggs was good, but I didn't really get the whole top 5 pick hype. Was he really a can't miss player? Well, if I knew his background a little bit better, I probably would have been on this hype train a lot sooner. He grew up in St. Paul, Minnesota, where he wasn't just a basketball prodigy, he was also a football star. Not like he's just playing this in his off time. No, he was like an actual prospect. He was named Mr. Football and Mr. Basketball for the state. First person to ever win both. He had D1 offers from many schools. He ended up choosing basketball, and it was obvious why. Playing at Gonzaga, he was a starter from day one. And he hit one of the wildest game winners in NCAA tournament history to beat UCLA in the Final Four.
Gonzaga has time to do something. Perfect season.
That moment, that shot, it sent the hype into overdrive. Scouts were already high on him, but now you had people calling him the next franchise point guard. He had the leadership, the toughness, the multi-sport pedigree. He was intense, smart, and physical, and basically built like a linebacker who could run your offense. In his rookie year in the NBA, the hype started to hit a wall. Suggs came in with real expectations. ESPN called him a lead guard in the making. Draft experts said Orlando got a steal at 5, but it didn't look like that on the floor. He missed over 30 games with a thumb injury and ankle sprains. When he did play, the shot was kind of shaky, barely 21% from 3, and the turnovers piled up. Also, the scoring wasn't as efficient as it should be yet. Now let me say this. Effort was never the problem. He played hard, he hustled, he defended. You can see that football DNA in how he attacks offenses. Full throttle, no hesitation. Except he actually has the footwork to not just plow into you like most football players going to play basketball. On the other side though, as a rookie, his offensive game was a bit messy. His handle looked tight on one play and then loose the next. He had some highlight passes, but also forced a lot of reads that weren't there. And there were moments, a 22-point night at the Garden, a steal and dunk versus Cleveland, but none of it was enough to quiet the doubts. He didn't look like a bust yet, just not quite ready yet. Year 2 didn't fix the offense overnight. The shooting was still shaky, the creation still came in flashes, but one thing became impossible to ignore. Jalen Suggs was turning into a real problem for opponents on defense. He guarded point guards, he guarded shooting guards, he fought over screens, blew up handoffs, called out coverages. The Magic didn't just throw him at tough matchups, they wanted him there. The stats started catching up with the eye test. By his 3rd year, Suggs wasn't just solid, he was elite. Top 10 in steal rate, top 5 in deflections per 36. And Orlando leaned all the way in. They gave him the tough assignments. They let him set the tone and asked him to be the head of the snake. So while the offense was still coming around, the defense had made him indispensable. He gave the Magic something they hadn't had in years, a backcourt stopper who could swing games without scoring. The funny part is, while everyone was talking about his defense, it was actually his offense that started to show some signs of life. While it took a while, it did happen. By year 4, aka 2025, Suggs wasn't a non-shooter anymore. He was knocking down threes at nearly 40%, taking them with confidence and spacing the floor the way Orlando needed. The wild drives, the early shot clock pull-ups, most of that was gone. He picked his spots better, played with more control, and didn't dribble himself into traffic just to prove that he could. Albeit he still wasn't running 20 pick and rolls a night, but he didn't have to. Most of the creation was happening through Paolo Banchero or Franz Wagner. All Suggs had to do was make the right pass, hit his shots, and kill other teams' point guards on defense. Which for a record, he did regularly. However, right when everything looked like it was starting to click, something terrible happened.
You see Toronto right back at you. You can't lay on the floor too long.
Suggs is down, Jeff, holding his back. Don't like that. Don't know how he got hit or what happened, but he is in a lot of pain.
Early 2025, Suggs started feeling something off in his knee. Turns out it was a trochlea cartilage injury, basically the groove that keeps your kneecap in place. It sucked. The Magic were rolling, and Suggs was having his best stretch. 16 a game, hitting threes, flying around on defense. Then came the knee injury. Surgery was next, and that was it. He was shut down for the rest of the season. But here's what didn't change: the identity he helped build. In Orlando, Suggs is more than his stat line. He's the tone setter, the head of the snake for one of the best defenses in the league. He doesn't need the ball all the time. He doesn't hijack possessions, he just competes. He'll let Paolo and Franz cook, and Suggs will take the toughest matchup, fight over screens, and crash the floor for loose balls. He's not the star, but he's the guy everyone else feeds off, the heartbeat. Jalen Suggs wasn't the cleanest top 5 pick. The development curve was choppy, the offense is still a work in progress, but 3.5 years later, Orlando has found themselves a foundational piece, an all-defense guy, the culture guy, someone to set the tone, and most of all, a winning basketball guy. He's not going to make 10 all-star teams, but he's the kind of guard that every playoff team wants, and the kind of teammate that coaches love. So no, he didn't become a star, but in my opinion, and I'm definitely not alone on this, the Magic didn't miss. They got a dude who helps you win.
With the 6th pick in the 2021 NBA Draft, the Oklahoma City Thunder select Josh Giddey.
While Josh Giddey was projected to be selected in the first round, not a lot of people expected him to be picked this high. So I think the question is, what did OKC see in Giddey that others didn't? And did they make a mistake? I mean, they did end up trading him after a few years. Yeah, spoiler alert. But why did OKC 3 years later trade their guy who was a rookie averaging 13, 8, and 6? Giddey was born in Yarraville, Australia. As a teenager, he emerged as one of the country's top prospects at the NBA Global Academy in Canberra, the same program that produced NBA champions like Andrew Bogut, Luke Longley, and Matthew Dellavedova. At 18, Giddey joined the Adelaide 36ers in the NBL, one of the best top professional leagues outside of the NBA. In his first and only season there, he averaged 10.9 points, 7.5 assists, and 7.4 rebounds in about 32 minutes per game, and ended up being the youngest player in league history to lead the NBL in assists. So yeah, a surprising pick, sure, but people weren't completely blown away by it either. Oklahoma City was deep in the rebuild, post-Westbrook and post-CP3. They weren't looking for a finished product, they were more collecting assets. And Giddey had plenty. He had the height, he had the feel for the game, and he had the passing vision that you really can't teach. He's not athletically explosive, and he wasn't a shooter, but he processed the game at a different speed. I can't really say that Giddey came into the league with major expectations, but people were definitely curious to see what he could do. Could this slow-footed Aussie with no jumper hold his own, let alone a top 6 pick? Well, his first season actually went a lot better than anyone expected a few months before the draft. He ran the offense most nights, played with pace, threw some wild passes, the jumper was still terrible, and the defense was not great, but the instincts, the feel for the game, the reads, they were ahead of schedule.
No, OKC. What a pass, Giddey underneath for Ziaire. The offensive team in check. Oh, look at that pass. Look at that pass. Oh, what a pass. Line, Giddey passes up the 3. Right back to Dort, underneath for the slam. And the back door, Giddey.
He became the youngest player in league history to drop a triple-double, and then he just kept stacking them. He won 4 straight Rookie of the Month awards. It wasn't efficient, but it was progress, and OKC could afford to be patient at this point. By year 2, things started to settle. SGA was back, Jalen Williams was emerging, and the Thunder was actually starting to look like a future competitor. And Giddey's numbers jumped. He was averaging a career high, 16.6 points, nearly 8 boards, and over 6 assists. Still though, the shot looked a little funky, but it started going in just enough to keep defenders honest, especially from the corners. Alright, so not a star, but clearly better and clearly fitting in. Maybe. However, he had a big moment in year 2. 31 points, 10 assists, 9 rebounds, in a play-in win over New Orleans. A big-time game in a real pressure spot. And then OKC got stopped by Minnesota. Still, you could kind of see the direction. He was smarter with the ball, less turnover prone, way more confident, but one issue was starting to creep up. If he wasn't the lead ball handler, what exactly was he? And this is where Giddey's 3rd season comes in. If I had to choose one word that describes it best, it was complicated. On paper, he looked like the same guy, but his role and overall impact was way different. With SGA playing at an MVP level and Jalen Williams taking on more offense, there just wasn't much left for Giddey to do. He wasn't initiating, he wasn't closing in the 4th, and teams were targeting him on defense. As the team got better, he failed to earn a bigger role in the system. More and more, Giddey was looking like a terrible fit for the team. Then came the off-court stuff. A legal investigation in late 2023. It dragged on for months. The media absolutely criticized him, and it cast a shadow over everything, and ultimately closed with no charges, but the damage was done, especially with him getting a booing ovation every time he stepped in the game.
Going at Gobert, who has been one of the best shot blockers in the NBA over the last tournament. The final night of group play.
Giddey kept playing, but any semblance of chemistry between him and the rest of the team was gone. Trade rumors picked up around the deadline, and by the summer, OKC moved him. They didn't miss on the player, they just kind of ran out of reasons to keep him. And if you're one of the people that was watching the 2024 playoffs, you remember him looking like the out guy during all the series. The player that seemed to be holding the team back from going farther. Giddey was traded to Chicago in the offseason. No one really knew what to make of it. OKC clearly moved on. The Bulls didn't have a plan either. They just needed a shakeup. As the 2025 season went on, Giddey started playing better and better. The offense gave him more touches, more space, and fewer decisions to overthink. After All-Star break though, he played his best stretch as a pro. 21.2 points a game, efficient shooting, and a real control over the offense. 10.7 rebounds a game. Just being intentional about getting it off the board. And to add to all of this, 9.3 assists per game. And he was actually staying in the fourth quarter and not getting benched for bad defense. So an after All-Star break nearly triple-double and closing games? Yeah. And to top it all off, he hit a game winner against the Lakers.
Bulls are out of timeouts. 2 seconds left. Giddey for the win. Go!
Oh my God! I cannot believe this. Elizabeth, I'm coming, baby. Oh, Lord.
He took over the fourth against Miami in the final game of the season to help the Bulls qualify for the play-in tournament. He was making shots he used to pass up on. The jumper held up, the reads were quick, and everything just looked smoother. People stopped talking about the fit, and they more just watched him hoop. He played with real confidence, got to his floater, attacked mismatches without hesitating, and when the catch-and-shoot threes dropped, the whole thing started to click. The shot started going in without looking too different too. He didn't make any huge changes in the shot mechanics, he simply started picking his spots more wisely, and shooting them with confidence. And for the first time, defenders actually had to close out, although the media was still skeptical. That floater I was talking about earlier, he used it every night. The same touch that made him a good passer translated into actual scoring. In mismatches, he used his size, backed guys down, and got to his spots. He wasn't looking like Kobe in the post or anything, but they worked. So yeah, there was no crazy reinvention here, just smarter decisions, better timing, and a team that had a spot for him to kind of just let him do him. Even the defense that had been a problem since day one didn't stand out in a bad way. He held up, rotated on time, and didn't get hunted as much. I don't think anyone's saying this, but OKC didn't mess this up. They knew exactly who they drafted and exactly when to move on. In Chicago, Giddey has a chance to reset, to run the offense his way, and to prove he's more than just a connector or a weird fit. I do wish Chicago could have traded for Giddey way earlier in his career. I mean, the 2022 season, which was Giddey's rookie year, was the year that Lonzo Ball went out. And just like how Lonzo was the connector that made Vucevic and Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan work, could Giddey have been the connector that they needed when Lonzo Ball got injured? I mean, while Lonzo was a little bit faster, a little bit more athletic, and at that point had a better three-point shot, I think Giddey could have developed his three-point shot better and play more of that transition offense like Lonzo does. Anywho, I'm done rambling. The question now isn't whether Giddey belongs in Chicago. Surprisingly, it's whether the Bulls can actually build something around him. Or will he be next in line for the forever going rebuild of the Bulls?
With the 7th pick, the Golden State Warriors select Jonathan Kuminga.
The Warriors picked Jonathan Kuminga 7th overall in the 21 draft. He came out of the G League Ignite program, big guy, athletic, full potential, but he wasn't looking like NBA ready. Most people saw him as a long-term project, and that's what made the pick weird. Golden State had Steph, Draymond, and Clay healthy again. They were trying to win a title like now, not wait on a 19-year-old to figure things out. We have a raw prospect on one side and a win-now team on the other. You can already see the tension forming. This was during the era of Golden State's two-timeline philosophy. The philosophy of building future stars while you still have your current stars, which usually never works out. Kuminga spent most of his rookie season in a low-minute role. He was behind Wiggins, Draymond, and Otto Porter Jr. in the rotation, and the Warriors weren't in development mode. He did get some chances. His first start came against Toronto, 26 points, played hard, finished plays, and kept it simple, but outside of that, spot minutes, occasional energy boosts, and nothing consistent. In the playoffs, he was barely part of the plan. But the Warriors did win the title, and Kuminga was along for the ride, the second youngest NBA champion ever, although he mostly watched the title run from the sides like the rest of us. Year 2 didn't really change much. Kuminga's numbers went up a little bit, 9.9 points, 3.4 rebounds, but his role stayed very inconsistent. He was still buried behind veterans, and still playing in short bursts. Steve Kerr leaned on players like Anthony Lamb and others, and really not because they were better, but because they made fewer mistakes. And with that being said, Kuminga barely played in the postseason. Kerr kept the rotation tight. The minutes that could have gone to Kuminga ended up going to the vets, so Kuminga was active, just not in the mix. Now, I don't think anyone ever said Kuminga lacked talent. He was definitely talented, no question, but Kerr just didn't trust him in close games, or most games. The reads were slow, some of his decisions were kinda and didn't really fit the system, and overall the risk felt too high.
Kuminga can't play defense.
I thought people been knew that. I thought that was
no. It's not that he can't play. It's not that he can't play, and then it starts to make sense when I watch him, and I understand Steve Kerr's reluctance to keep him out of the lineup. I don't think he gets it. There's a part of me that watches Kuminga, and as much as I want, because there's players who you can just turn them loose, and in the process of turning them loose, there's not much thinking that goes on with turning them loose. But then there's times when they do have to think the game, and that's where it becomes detrimental to them. And I think Kuminga is one of those dudes where I think there's some things he just doesn't understand.
So, heading into year 3, nothing was guaranteed. The team picked up his 4th-year option, but his role still wasn't defined. He was still coming off the bench and getting singled out for every single mistake he made.
Ziaire to Kuminga, and Steph was open.
He's like, Steph, sit out!
Now, Steph's not in the game, but it's never a bad idea to pass the ball to Steph Curry.
In December, he spoke up. After getting benched again, he told reporters, "Sometimes I come out the game not knowing what I did, and that messes with my head. That wasn't just frustration, it was really someone trying to figure out if he was even in the plan." And later, over a text message, he learned he was benched. By January, his role started to shift. After a meeting with Kerr, the rotation changed. Kuminga began getting steady minutes, not just spot starts or garbage time, and he became Golden State's 2nd leading scorer. His minutes jumped into the 30s, and for the first time in his short career, he had a stable role. However, it didn't fix the season. The Warriors were never consistent. The bench rotated every week. Klay looked like he didn't want to play like most of the time, and Draymond did what he does best at this point in his career. They finished 10th in the West and got bounced in the play-in. Kuminga broke through, but it happened during a year that didn't go anywhere. Kuminga came into the 2025 season with real momentum. Draymond Green called him an all-star candidate, and Steve Kerr said he was ready for the leap. And for once, the expectations were pretty high for him. Early on, he looked the part, efficient scoring, played with control, defended better, but an injury in December stalled things. He missed time, and by the time he came back, the roster had completely changed.
Breaking news out of the Miami Heat. Our Shams Charania reporting that Jimmy Butler is on his way to the Golden State Warriors. The deal includes sending Andrew Wiggins, Dennis Schroeder, Kyle Anderson, and a protective 1st-round pick, all to the Miami Heat.
The Warriors had made a big trade for Jimmy Butler. Yes, the Jimmy Butler that plays the same position as Kuminga. So safe to say that this complicated everything. Touches for Kuminga disappeared. Defensive matchups got shuffled. Kuminga still played well, but the fit got weird again. Because if you had Jimmy Butler and Kuminga on the floor, they were both small forwards who didn't really shoot the 3-ball that well. However, the bigger issue came off the court. Kuminga was eligible for the bag, and he didn't take it. At some point, he had been reported to ask for over $30 million a year, and obviously that didn't happen so far. So Kuminga bet on himself. He turned down whatever extension was being offered to him, expecting a bigger role and a bigger payday. But as the playoffs began, he found himself on the bench. Despite being the team's 3rd leading scorer after the Butler trade, Kuminga didn't play in the final regular season game, the play-in, or Game 1 against Houston. Steve Kerr explained that the addition of Jimmy Butler changed the team's dynamics. With Butler and Draymond Green on the floor, there really wasn't enough spacing for Kuminga. But just when it looked like his season was fizzling, Kuminga reminded everyone of why the Warriors drafted him. In the playoff series against Minnesota, Steph went down in Game 1. With apparently no other options, Steve Kerr finally unleashed Kuminga, and he made it matter. In games 2 through 5 off the bench, Kuminga averaged around 24 points per game. And his stats were elite. I mean, just check out what he did in Game 3. 30 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 blocks, shooting 11 for 18 from the field. And then in Game 4, he does it again, 23 points, making 11 out of 12 free throws, and being the leading scorer for the game. He scored 26 in Game 5 and kept them in the hunt. Yet somehow, even though he kept pulling out these crazy performances, Kuminga never started a single game in the series. Kerr kept him coming off the bench. So now we're headed into the summer. And for Kuminga, the options are kind of complicated, or maybe they're not all that much. Option 1, Golden State gives him the bag and a starring role. This could happen, but just seeing how they've treated him so far, I don't see this one making it through. Option number 2, they let him walk and he signs somewhere else. This is possible, but restricted free agency gives the Warriors control. And then there's option 3, another team offers and Golden State matches, and then trades him. And I feel like this one's likely. Golden State will match him to avoid losing him for nothing, and then either now or later on trade him, especially with the tighter CBA constraints. But here's where things can get dicey. If Golden State decides to match whatever offer another team gives him, and then when they bring him back, they have him come off the bench again, I feel like Kuminga's gonna push back this time. He's already been vocal about how sitting affects him, enough bench time and a guaranteed contract, and he's gonna demand a way out. So, after a long stalemate in the offseason of 2025, the Warriors would end up signing Kuminga to a 2-year, $48.5 million contract with the team option in the second year, allowing Golden State to opt out in the second year if they don't want him anymore, or paying him just enough money to where he's still a good trade asset. So that after January 15th, once the trade restriction's up, they can figure out if they still want to move on from him. Kuminga, although signing with the Warriors this offseason, is still looking for his future home as a starting forward. I think Kuminga was a pretty decent pick at number 7. Golden State just didn't have the right system to allow him to thrive. He needs game time minutes, like real minutes to experiment, make mistakes, and grow through them. In a different team, with a coach willing to let him play through the mess, he might have already taken the leap. Realistically, I could see Kuminga becoming an Andrew Wiggins type player, but with more focus on the offensive side than the defensive side. Overall, Kuminga was a good risk at pick number 7, just not on the right team. All right,
with the 8th pick, the Orlando Magic select Franz Wagner.
All right, let's move on to something less chaotic. A good surprise. Franz Wagner didn't come in with hype. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't loud, he was just solid. His brother Mo was already in the league. Franz came up through Alba Berlin's system and made his senior debut at 16. Then he went to Michigan, played 2 seasons, and quietly became one of the most dependable wings in the country. When Orlando picked him at 8, most fans barely reacted. No boos, no cheers, just a safe pick. A guy who could shoot, defend, and maybe play a little off ball. As it happens with European prospects, Orlando wasn't sure what to expect, but they still wanted someone who was at least competent and could play the right way. And it turns out, that's exactly what they got. He didn't need that much time to adjust. He stepped into the league and looked like he'd been there for years. No panic, no wasted motion, just clean basketball. In year 2, his scoring jumped to 18.6 points a game. Still efficient, still low maintenance. He didn't force shots, didn't break the offense, just got to his spots and made smart plays. By this point, he was already becoming one of the most reliable two-way wings in the league. He guarded multiple positions, read the floor, and rarely made the wrong decision. If Orlando needed a bucket, he'd get you something, and if they needed to stop, he'd go and take that assignment. The only knock was how he handled late game possessions. Wagner could be effective for 3 quarters and then kind of disappear in crunch time. He wasn't afraid, just too willing to defer. And it left Orlando leaning on less reliable options. Playing in the 2023 FIBA World Cup, Wagner missed the group stage with an ankle injury. He returned in the knockout rounds and immediately gave Germany a boost. He scored efficiently, rebounded well, defended his matchups, and didn't overcomplicate anything. Germany would go on to win the whole thing. Wagner didn't dominate, but he did play high-level basketball against NBA talent. The World Cup didn't change how people saw him overnight, but it was the clearest sign yet that he could do more than just blend in. His 2024 season wasn't a massive leap, but it was consistent, and sometimes that's more important. No big jumps, no flashy headlines, just dependable winning basketball. He gave Orlando the smart, efficient scoring that they came to expect, outside of his 3-point shot taking a nosedive. But what really stood out was what he did in the playoffs. The Magic pushed Cleveland to 7 games in the first round, a series most people expected to be over in 5, and Wagner was a huge reason why. He stepped up as the second option behind Paolo, made big shots, played disciplined defense, and never looked overwhelmed by the moment. And that was a big moment for him, because people would now stop calling him just a glue guy and start realizing he's someone you can lean on in a playoff series. No, it wasn't a breakout year, but it was the year that Franz proved he belongs and can show up when it counts. In the start of the 2025 season, the Magic's #1 option, Paolo Banchero, went down with a huge injury, and that's when Wagner took over. When Paolo was out, Franz was the #1 option, and with that, the Magic went 12-3. Franz posted some of the best averages of his career in that stretch. He dropped 37 against the Lakers, with 11 assists, 4 steals, and the game winner.
Looking for help, shot clock down to 5. He's gonna go for the win, shot is up, and he got it! Franz Wagner! You are fantastic, Franz!
This was a huge breakout stretch for Wagner, but when Banchero returned, Wagner's role shrank. But it kind of seems like Orlando might have a Tatum-Brown situation on their hand, where they could build a team around option 1A and an option 1B. Franz's offensive game has also evolved this year. Almost 50% of his makes are unassisted. He's reading defenses off the dribble, creating space with footwork, and hitting shots at every level. He doesn't draw a lot of fouls right now, but outside of that, there aren't many holes left. Defensively, he guards 1 through 4, stays in position, and rarely makes the wrong read. His chemistry with Paolo is seamless. Play works through both of them, he fits any action, quiet off the court, steady on it. He's the type of player you win with, whether or not you build around him. Franz signed a 5-year, $224 million extension with incentives that could push it to $269 million. Orlando clearly sees him as part of the core, and right now, he's a borderline all-star, but the ceiling's definitely higher than that. In my opinion, he's already one of the best forwards in the league. The next step is proving that he can take over when it matters most. Playoff games, closing stretches, the stuff that separates great role players from all-stars. I wish I had more to say, but the Magic 100% hit with this #8 pick. A steady, solid, reliable player who will most likely be an all-star and someone you can build a contender around.
With the 9th pick in the 2021 NBA Draft, the Sacramento Kings select Davion Mitchell.
Davion Mitchell grew up in Hinesville, Georgia, a small town just outside Savannah. He spent most of his childhood in a gym, like literally. His grandma ran the local rec center, and that became home. He started his college career at Auburn, then transferred to Baylor after one season. He redshirted, waited his turn, and came back even sharper. By the time Baylor would end up making their title run, Mitchell was their defensive anchor and emotional leader. The Kings took him 9th overall in the 2021 draft. The nickname was already there, Off Night, supposedly what scorers had whenever he guarded them. They didn't draft him for offense, they drafted him because nobody wanted to be guarded by him. Mitchell's rookie year showed promise. He averaged 11.5 points, 4.2 assists. The defense translated right away. He hounded ball handlers, pressed full court, and stayed in front of pretty much everyone. He played hard, but the touches weren't there. He rarely got consistent usage. The defensive pressure never dropped, but the offensive rhythm was gone. One game he's playing 28 minutes, and the next he's out of the rotation. Mitchell's strengths were still obvious. Elite on-ball defense, great assist to turnover ratio, but off the ball, he got lost too often, and the jumper never came around. In June 2024, Sacramento traded Mitchell, Sasha Vezenkov, Jamal Sheed, and the 45th pick to Toronto for Jalen McDaniels, which was nothing more than a tax move. Toronto picked up Mitchell for his defense and maturity. He started the year as the backup point guard behind Emmanuel Quickly, a low usage role, but one the Raptors thought they could trust. Coach Darko liked what he brought defensively, the pressure, the ball denial, it all fit the Raptors system. And for a stretch in January, Mitchell helped anchor a bench unit that sparked a 7-2 run. But the emergence of Jamal Sheed, which I think I said Sheed before, changed the equation. He was younger, quicker, more upside, so Mitchell's minutes started to slide. And by midseason, he was the 7th man, a situational defender, not part of closing lineups. He was playing decent, however, Toronto had other plans for him. They needed cap space, and Mitchell had value. So they sent him to Miami for PJ Tucker, a second rounder and cash. It was a clean exit, no drama, it was simple math. When Mitchell got to Miami, he finally had room to breathe. The Heat actually gave him real minutes over the final stretch of the season, where he averaged about 30 minutes a game, and he responded with the best basketball of his career. He outproduced his Toronto win shares in just 10 games with the Heat, and more importantly, he became the engine for a late season rally that pulled Miami back into play-in range. And in the play-in, Mitchell kept going. Against Chicago, he put up 15 points and 9 assists on perfect shooting. Then came the OT win over Atlanta, 16 points, 5 assists, and 9 of those came in overtime. He hit big shots, forced turnovers, and sealed the game with a dagger 3.
Shot clock winding down. Mitchell, jumper. Oh yeah!
If playing stats counted, it would have been a Heat playoff record. Miami became the first 10 seed to reach the playoffs, and Mitchell led it. So, Sacramento gave up, Toronto moved on, and Miami gave him a chance. He didn't force the breakout, he played his way into it. The defense was still elite, the jumper held up, and the trust from Eric Spoelstra turned everything around. Mitchell hits restricted free agency now with real leverage. After years on the fringe, it seems like he's finally carved out a niche for himself. Mitchell didn't change who he was, it was just the system finally matched the skill set. He doesn't need isolation, he needs spacing, structure, and trust. And Miami gave him all three. And in return, he's giving them great basketball. Finishes at the rim despite his size, stays efficient in catch and shoot spots, doesn't hijack possessions, and he's not going to have the ball in his hands a lot. But for a motion-heavy system, he's exactly what you want next to a star. There's a reason the Heat keep calling him their guy after just 2 months. Mitchell went from trade filler to the engine behind a play-in comeback all in one season. For a guy who looked like a lost cause in Sacramento, that's one heck of a pivot. Now the big question, did Sacramento make the right pick? I feel like it's safe to say no. Not because of Mitchell, but because Sacramento didn't need to draft 3 starting level point guards on their team, and then go trade Mitchell for essentially nothing.
With the 10th pick in the 2021 NBA Draft, the New Orleans Pelicans select Ziaire Williams.
By looking at just video, you'd never tell that Ziaire Williams is one of the most hyped prospects in the 2021 class. Memphis drafted him 10th overall, not for what he was, but for what he might become. And when LeBron is tweeting stuff like this about you before you make the league, you know the expectations are probably going to be high for him. He was a 5-star recruit coming from Sierra Canyon, a McDonald's All-American, and had all the tools teams look for: length, mobility, and a smooth shooting form. Scouts saw the potential and figured he'd grow into a high-level two-way wing. The year he went to college, he was considered the best freshman in the country, but his college year at Stanford didn't help the case. Pandemic restrictions wrecked the schedule. The team lived out of hotels, no real practice gym, no home court, and his numbers kind of fell off. About 37% from the field, 29% from 3, and a high turnover rate. He also missed the time to attend his uncle's funeral, the person who put a basketball in his hands. Despite the bumps on the road, Memphis didn't flinch. They bought in on the long-term vision. His rookie season was pretty simple. He ran in transition, finished plays, stayed in his lane, played off a jaw, hit open shots, and defended his spot. When Dillon Brooks went down, he started, and to be frank, he did pretty good. In year 2 though, they changed the plan. They gave him more on-ball reps in Summer League. They tried to speed up his development and it didn't work. He struggled with decision making and spacing, the confidence seemed to drop, and then came the knee tendonitis, which sidelined him for 24 games. Year 3 really didn't fix anything. More injuries, more inconsistency. He bounced in and out of the rotation, eventually lost his role to Gigi Jackson and Vince Williams Jr. He finished the year with 51 games played, then got benched for the final 21. Memphis gave up, and he was labeled a bust. In the offseason, they traded him to Brooklyn with a 2030 second-round pick. It was your classic salary dump. Williams found out mid-vacation in Tahiti, but Brooklyn gave him structure. Jordi Fernandez didn't overload him, just told him to defend, run, and shoot when he was open. The coaching staff simplified everything. No ball screens, no self-creation, just play to his strengths. And it kind of worked. He looked lighter, both mentally and physically. The jumper was consistent for the first time in his career. He held up on switches, played with energy, and got minutes that weren't charity. His first game back in Memphis told the story. 17 points, 4 steals, plus a loud transition dunk.
Williams takes it in for the slam.
He looked like someone who finally belonged in a rotation. Things never clicked in Memphis. He battled injuries, knee, hip, and back, and missed big development windows. The team gave him on-ball reps early that didn't suit him. The confidence slipped, and the rotation passed him by. In Brooklyn, he's become reliable. He guards wings, hits spot-up threes, and crashes the board. His minutes are earned, and he called the trade a second draft night. And for the first time in 3 seasons, he's actually looking like a pretty good NBA player. So, how do we rate Ziaire? Nobody's talking about stardom anymore. That part's way gone. But Zaire's not out of the league. He's playing real minutes on a team that's giving him a shot. Not because of potential, but because he's earned it. The difference now, he knows what he is. A wing who can defend, run the floor, hit open shots, and play within a system. Not a star, not a project, just a role player with a real job. He doesn't need promise, he needs consistency. Second chances don't last forever, let me tell you. But he has one, and for the first time since draft night, the arrow's actually pointing up. And for the pick, I don't know. I think this is the first one I'm gonna have to truly say no to. I'm proud of the young man for staying in the league and making the most of his second chance. But Memphis probably should have gone with a different guy. While personally I wouldn't call Ziaire a bust, he still might turn into a decent role player. But the fact is, a lot better players were taken after him. And in hindsight, this one feels like a reach for the number 10th pick. Should I say this? I don't know, man. I think the best player from this draft might not even be in the top 5 picks. You'll have to wait for the next part of this video to see. Yes, I'm going through the rest of the picks in the next video. For now, since everyone likes doing redrafts, here's how I would rank the picks. Cade's still the guy. The injury slowed him down, but the all-around game hasn't gone anywhere. Mobley's defense at the power forward and center position changed everything for Cleveland. And there's the classic phrase, you can't teach size, and that's definitely following him. Scottie and Franz are winning players on both ends. Well, Franz way more than Scottie, and I say that because I could see a world where Franz passes Scottie overall. Jalen Green's still raw, but absolutely dangerous on offense. Suggs has an important role on his team. And Giddey, well, if he ever gets a legit jumper, we'll talk, because I think he would be like the unathletic version of Lonzo Ball that Chicago needed a couple years ago, and potentially be the offensive hub on a good team. Kuminga, although signing with the Warriors this offseason, is still looking for his future home as a starting forward. Mitchell's having a moment in Miami, and Ziaire still hanging on, but Brooklyn might be the last stop. Keyword might, but hopefully not. So that's the top 10 from the 2021 draft. Some stars, some busts, and some stories that still aren't finished. But if you want to know what this all looks like in real time, tracking a player's career arc from the beginning, the hype, the red flags, the early breakouts, then you should check out this video that I did, the 2023 NBA draft 1 year later, even though we're going on 2 years now. Same idea, different draft class, but this time we're catching guys right at the beginning of their career arc. Who's flashing star power? Who's already looking like a mistake? The answer might surprise you, so click on it and you'll see what I mean.